which makes the aquifer more salty. And it was all for what reason? Just because we wanted to sell a cheaper water softener. That's it. And it's plowing through salt, and the customer doesn't really recognize that, hey, I'm spending this money, because they're spending money residually. Every couple of months they're buying more salt, and they don't comprehend it. So that consumer can get tricked by saying, I want to go with a cheaper unit, but what they have to understand is there's a long term, because this unit should last around 10 years to 15 years. There's a long-term cost associated with that, because if you're on vacation and went through 36 pounds of salt, that's money that you just burned down the drain. Let's say that your wife went on vacation and you were sitting home, you barely used water. Again, you're plowing through salt that you really don't need. But again, back in the 80s and the 90s, we really didn't know any better, and we didn't care. In addition to that, when we talk about taking iron out of the water, we would typically have to put these things on overrides like this, put it every other day, because it's taken out iron, and if you don't have it clean itself every couple of days, the iron will slip through the filter or through the water softener, and it will get into the house. So a lot of companies would try to use this as an iron filter too, which it did take out up to 2 parts per million of iron, but it did it very poorly, and the only way to do that is to plow through a lot of salt. So we learned our lesson only probably about 5 to 10 years ago, and that's why we started really pushing our market into, since we have about on average 2 parts per million of iron, to buying an iron filter or chlorination system that kills the bacteria and oxidizes the iron out of the water, and then we can migrate to a more efficient water softener. We did jump on board with the 760Is as a company. Angel did. We went to the 760i, which is Autotrol's next version. So they went from 155 to 255. In between, they did do a 268 valve to sort of improve the porting, trying to achieve full 1-inch flow rates. So that these valves did come out in the 90s into 2000s. This one is actually, date code was 2004. So we would use these for some of our larger homes that were being built in 2004 and 5, just to achieve better flow rates. And they did achieve better flow rates, but they still left a lot of salt behind. We went to the 760i because it's a computer. We thought, oh great, a computer, it's going to be able to do more programming and all that. You really can't. All it really did is make this computer, this metered unit that we have here, that was a little cumbersome, it made it a little bit easier to use. They did change the porting on it to achieve a better flow rates, just like their 268 valve. If you notice, the 268 valve ports look a lot like this 268 port here. The top assembly is completely different, still has flappers. I think they redesigned the ports inside so they could achieve better flow rates, and then they put this control board on it. The weakness that we found right away when we did this is we got a lot of hammering in the house. So a lot of customers would call us and say, holy criminy, what are you guys doing to us? The pipes are hammering and flapping and they're shaking, because of course this is connected to plumbing pipes. So they would sit there and shake, because as this motor, went at a slower clip, or maybe faster clip, it then started making those flappers flap, which then vibrated the whole unit, which shook the plumbing. So we eliminated this unit shortly after its introduction. They've tried several things to get it going. We were one of the largest Autotrol dealers in Chicagoland, and so when we wouldn't buy it, it really upset them. They came down to visit us. They tried a few different things. We worked with them. I think, Eric, you guys probably visited with them at your company that you'd worked for. And did you find did the solutions work for you that they came out? Yeah, so some companies still love them. We didn't, and so we looked for other alternatives as a corporation. So as time went on, this Fleck Corporation, we didn't really want to use them because Fleck would sell to absolutely everybody and anybody. And you would have companies that weren't really professionals selling this product, and they'd lowball the price, and they'd say to a consumer, oh, I got the same thing. And they'd put this valve on a dinky little teeny tank and charge the customer less money than we would, and they wouldn't program it right, they wouldn't set it up correctly, and yet they would earn that customer's business, and the customer was falsely under the impression it was the same as ours. And what we didn't do back then was properly articulate our expertise in understanding the chemistry, the physics, and the mechanics of water. Back then we were using their brochure too, and we were fighting, you know, head over tail over, I've got the same unit and we're using their brochure. And so that was a mistake on our behalf. We really should have worked more fully on, we are experts in water, so we know how to size them correctly. So whether it's using a larger tank like these, or designing the system and programming it right, we should have really talked about that technology, but we didn't because we were using the same picture. So we were saying, all right, well, we need to do something different. Is there another product on the market? And along came a company called Clack Corporation. So Clack came out. Richard Clack is the owner of Clack Corporation. I've met him. He's a very nice man. He came out. He was making salt tanks. Salt tanks, I don't have one here, but there's one there, the black salt tank. They were experts in making salt tanks. So they cornered the market on selling salt tanks to a lot of the distributors and a lot of the major companies out there. So as he built his reputation and his network throughout the United States with all these distributors buying his salt tanks, the next thing he did was go to Fleck Corporation and hired off some of their engineers, recruited their engineers, and they spent many years designing a new control valve. So when they designed the new control valve, they wanted to have a 1-inch distributor inside, like that tank over there, 1-inch porting, but the big problem that all these other products had is they had external turbine meters, where you had a turbine rotating on the inside of this valve, and on the outside, as that turbine went over, there's a little magnet on that turbine, and every time it spun around, a receptor on the opposite side of that valve would meter how many times that magnet went around. So that's how they counted how many gallons. The problem is, as you can see all the iron here, that iron would build up on the inside of the valve, and it would coat it so much that as it would turn around, the meter wouldn't meter properly. So Clack Corporation said, oh, let's improve on that. So they developed a way to put a meter and hardwire the meter actually inside the valve and yet be waterproof. So that was their really, quite honestly, phenomenal invention that they came out with in the time. And they did some other things, still made it a piston assembly design like Fleck. They didn't go towards the flapper design because, again, we had a lot of people complain about hammering on the copper pipes. And they made this valve basically...
The piston is plastic versus Teflon coated.
This piston is plastic versus Teflon coated. So as it came out, that is true. We started after a couple of years of being in the business. We started seeing we had weaknesses with this valve. Not bad ones, but that is one of the weaknesses of the valve. They have come up with different Teflon coatings and other things to make it work a little bit better, but overall it is a wearable item, and that is a service item that we go out and replace on every probably 3 year, 4 years.
Those are a lot better than the Teflon coated ones.
Well, these are a lot better than the Teflon.
They don't leak the way the Teflon
Okay, so they don't leak as much. Again, I'm not in on the service side of things as well these days since this came out. When this came out, Clack Corporation made it very clear that all of these products here, when the internet became popular, they're all sold over the internet. Anytime Dick and Harry can buy it on the internet, any consumer can go and find a price on the internet, and then you have a problem where a customer is like seeing, pricing of this valve, and they don't grasp the concept. If they see this online and it's $500, and you're selling it for $1,200, $1,500, they don't understand why. Well, that's just the valve. It doesn't include the programming, the testing, the installation, having a licensed plumber lug it there, the 10 feet of copper pipe that it took to plumb it in, the sizing of the tank, the resin, the filter material that goes inside the tank, the distributor that goes inside of it. So they don't factor all that in as a consumer looks at it, so they hammer the water educator or the salesperson like, wow, I'm not buying that, you guys are criminals. In reality, you're not. Clack Corporation, Richard Clack being as smart in my opinion as he is, said he will track the serial number on every one of these items, only sell it to distributors, and those distributors sign an exclusive agreement that it will never be on the internet. So this product won't be on the internet. Now those distributors can sell it to a guy out of his garage. So you still have a competitor of a guy out of his garage buying this valve. Now, that distributor that he buys it from is called an OEM, original equipment manufacturer. So the distributor literally buys this valve, puts it on a tank, and the distributor himself puts in a distributor and puts in resin. So that distributor, because he wants to earn every guy out of his garage's business, he'll go and buy Taiwanese or Chinese resin, cheap distributor because he doesn't really care about it. And in fact, he'll even buy a Chinese-made vessel these days because they're a lot cheaper. So now, a guy out of his garage who's all about price and is trying to earn Mr. Smith or Mr. Jones's business is looking all about price, so he buys the cheapest one. And he uses Clack's valve because it's not on the internet. No, that makes sense. So he sells that unit and he tries to get $1,000 or $1,200 for it. But again, what the consumer is missing out is, what is the quality of resin in here? What we know about Chicagoland is Chicagoland resides on a very bad pocket of radium. So radium, as it's sitting under the Earth's crust, tries to find its way to the atmosphere. In its pathway, as it comes up through the Earth, it attaches itself to that water molecule. So what's interesting is a very high quality water softener removes the radium out of the water. We're on EPA cases whereby we are required by law to use the very best system that has the very best ingredients to take radium out. And so we go back to, eventually we're going to get to the very best water softener in our opinion, the Eco water softener, and that unit has one of the only certifications to remove radium for a residential home in the United States, or in our Great Lakes area. We deal with the EPA out of the Great Lakes. But the reason why they have that is they went through the process of certifying, actually taking the whole unit, head to toe. They submitted it to a not-for-profit called NSF, National Safety Foundation. There, scientists take the product and they run radium through the radium that's liquefied in water. They run it through the water softener, and then they test the product water. And they prove they prove the manufacturer's claim. So if the manufacturer says it takes out radium, they validate it. So the EPA looks for that validation. None of these products that I've shown you have that validation. Some of them have a control valve NSF cert or even a WQA cert. Some of them, the tank might have some sort of WQA cert or NSF cert. The resin itself inside may or may not have that NSF cert to remove radium, but you just don't know. So what we do know is we know that some of the higher end products have invested that heavy money to prove that their products are worthwhile. And when they've invested that money, they charge a little bit more because they've done their due diligence. And they also have new technology that justifies their higher cost. So as we continue down the process of this product, we go back to this, we have to trust, or we have to hope that the guy that's selling it to Mr. Smith out of his garage is using an American-made, or an NSF-rated fiberglass tank. NSF 42 says it's not going to add anything to the water. Now, a lot of the Chinese tanks don't have any NSF listings. We all know that the Chinese are known for contaminating a lot of the stuff that they export to us. Thomas the Train is a great example. Thomas the Train, there's a huge recall for Thomas the Train because they were blending their paints with lead. And they were doing it and they were selling it to the manufacturers who made little toys for children. And so here our children, America's children, are playing and putting toys in their mouth that had lead in it. So they had to do a huge recall for Thomas the Train toys. And that's because even though the manufacturer said it's all safe, they're all the way on the other side of the planet. And we're trusting that they're doing it right. And so they don't follow the same standards that we do in America. They don't submit their products to NSF. So they, in our opinion, as a high-end dealer, we don't trust them. We don't want to buy from them. We don't want to buy from anyone unless they go through the process of proving it. Now, maybe a Chinese company one day will submit their products to NSF, and in doing so, they must maintain proper records. So while they hold that rating, they prove that their products continually meet these standards. So when we sell this, as we decided to sell this product, we moved from this Clack valve to this valve manufactured by Hillenbrand. What we found was Hillenbrand is a Clack valve that made a contract with Richard Clack to take and improve their computer technology so that they could better control the piston that went back and forth. In addition to that, they were able to provide the consumer a much more user and easy to understand format of the time, the dates, allowed us as a high-end dealer to do better diagnosis with water problems. Because a lot of our clients, I'd almost argue 50% of our customers are on private well water. Another other 50% of our customers are on well water provided by cities. So when we want to do proper diagnosis when we walk into a house, because inevitably we got to go see these people to service them, we have to go out and say what's going wrong. This valve allowed us to accurately see day by day over a 30 to 40 day increment, what is the water being used. It's a little harder to do it on this valve. So we were able to actually drive into this control valve and see, oh, the number one